Have you ever been humiliated in front of a crowd? Well, that's exactly what happened to me, in front of his friends, in front of everyone. Derek kicked me when I was down, laughing like it was a joke, but what happened next shocked everyone. It wasn't a screaming match or a fight. It was something that left him speechless and his friends totally confused. Want to know how I got my revenge? Stick around because trust me, this isn't what you're expecting. It was supposed to be one of those nights where everything was effortless, the kind where laughter flows naturally, the conversations are light, and the atmosphere is filled with good vibes. We were all friends, gathered in the comfort of the living room, the dim lights casting a soft glow over everything. But tonight, something felt off. Derek, as usual, was the loudest one in the room, always trying to steal the spotlight with his jokes, trying to impress his friends with every word he said. I watched from the floor, away from the center of attention, letting the chatter surround me. I was never the type to make waves, especially when he was around. For some reason, I always found myself in the background, a quiet observer of his antics. I wasn't unhappy with that role. In fact, I preferred it. Confrontation wasn't my thing. I knew how to play my part, keep my distance, avoid the tension, and enjoy the evening without causing trouble. But tonight, something inside me snapped. Derek had always pushed my buttons in small ways, but tonight, he crossed a line I couldn't ignore. He was being more obnoxious than usual, and I could feel it. The laughter, the teasing, and then the unexpected. Something was about to change, and I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. It all began with a harmless joke, a playful tease that had become a recurring part of our interactions. We'd laughed about it countless times before, but tonight, something felt different. Derek, as usual, was the center of attention, egged on by his friends who were all too eager to encourage his antics. The room was filled with their loud laughter, but it felt like the walls were closing in on me. I could feel my pulse quicken, the growing discomfort settling deep in my chest. As Derek leaned in, his face twisted in that all too familiar mock amusement, I could sense that something was off. "Don't take everything so seriously," he said, his tone sharp, as if belittling me was part of his routine. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could utter a word, he did something I didn't expect. Without warning, he kicked my plate, sending my food scattering across the floor in a messy heap. The shock of it hit me hard, and for a brief moment, everything around me froze. The room fell silent, but only for an instant. Then, the laughter erupted again, louder, more mocking. My face flushed with embarrassment, the heat of humiliation flooding through me. I looked at Derek, and there it was, that smug grin, as though he just pulled off the best joke ever. I was stunned, but beneath it all, something inside me snapped. This wasn't just a joke anymore, it was a personal attack. Derek had crossed a line, and this time, I wasn't going to stay silent. As the laughter echoed around the room, I felt a shift inside me. This wasn't just some petty joke anymore. It was an attack, a humiliation in front of his friends, and for the first time, I realized I was no longer just a passive observer in my own life. I was done being the one left picking up the pieces of his careless behavior, done hiding my hurt behind forced smiles and quiet tears. I wasn't going to let Derek get away with it this time, not in front of his friends, not with his ego inflated by their laughter. But I wasn't going to give him the reaction he was waiting for. I wasn't going to raise my voice or escalate the situation. That would have been too easy, too predictable. Instead, I was going to hit him where it hurt most, his pride. While his friends continued to laugh, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me, I took a deep breath and watched him. Derek thrived on attention, on being the one everyone noticed. His pride was everything to him, his greatest asset and his greatest weakness. I would use that against him. I didn't need to shout to fight. All I needed was one white took every ounce of restraint in me to keep my composure. As I slowly stood up, I brushed off the remnants of the spilled food, pretending to be unaffected by the humiliation Derek had just put me through. The laughter that filled the room began to fade, drowned out by the quiet rage simmering inside me. My eyes locked on Derek. His smug expression was like a challenge, one that I wasn't going to accept with a typical outburst. I had a better plan. Without saying a word, I walked past him, deliberately ignoring the mocking chuckles and the sympathetic glances from his friends. I kept my head high, walking towards the kitchen. Inside, a strange calmness settled over me, and I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. Derek had made his move, and now it was my turn. A few minutes later, I reappeared in the living room, my steps deliberate and measured. As I approached the coffee table, I saw Derek's friends still buzzing with laughter, unaware of what was about to unfold. With a calmness that belied the storm inside me, I reached for the drink in front of Derek and tipped it, spilling the entire contents all over his lap. The room froze. The laughter stopped. Derek's face turned from arrogance to sheer shock as his eyes widened. His friends stood in stunned silence, not knowing how to react. No one said a word, but the weight of the moment was far more powerful than any argument could have been. Time moved to bring his world crashing down, and I was about to make that move. Derek sat there, his face a mix of shock and anger, as the cold liquid soaked through his jeans. The smirk that had once been plastered across his face was now replaced by confusion and embarrassment. His pride had taken a hit, and the image he had carefully built in front of his friends had been shattered in an instant. I stood there, unshaken, watching the entire scene unfold. There was no need for words, no need for words, no need for a heated argument. The silence between us was more powerful than any retaliation I could have mustered. His friends, who had been laughing at my expense just moments ago, were now exchanging uneasy glances. The mood had shifted. The tension in the room was thick, and I could feel it pressing in on all sides. Derek, still reeling from the humiliation, finally stood up, fury flashing in his eyes. He opened his mouth to shout, but before he could say anything, I spoke quietly, my voice calm and unwavering. "I hope this is funny too," I said, my words cutting through the silence. Derek froze. His anger was palpable, but he didn't know how to respond. His friends, too, were silent, unsure of how to react. The evening ended soon after, Derek storming out in frustration, while his friends whispered among themselves. As I watched him leave, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. I had reclaimed my dignity in a way no one had expected, and in the end, that was all that mattered. If you were as shocked as I was by what happened, make sure to hit that subscribe button on the Black Visionaries channel. You don't want to miss more stories like this, trust me. And if you've ever been in a similar situation where revenge took a completely unexpected turn, drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share with your friends, and hit that bell so you'll be the first to know when we drop new, jaw-dropping stories. Thanks for watching, and remember, your story matters too.